You keep looping the scene. You've replayed it in your mind 20, 30, maybe 100 times by now. You know every detail. You followed the instructions carefully. You've entered the silence. You've felt yourself in the end. You've imagined the scene exactly as Neville taught it. And yet here you are, days or weeks later, staring at the same unchanged circumstances, asking yourself the one question that haunts every serious student of this law. Why isn't my scene working? Tonight I want to speak to you about the invisible saboteurs that live not in your scene, but in what you do before it, during it, and especially after it. The scene itself is rarely the problem. I tell you, the scene is almost never the problem. What is the problem is the attitude you bring to it, the expectancy or lack of it, the lust you attach to it, the texting or lack of it, the lust you attach to it, the checking, the testing, the waiting you impose upon it after you think you've done it. Your scene isn't broken. Your relationship with the scene is. And tonight we are going to repair that relationship so completely that you walk away from this episode with the one approach that actually produces results. The one seen, done, released approach. Not done and monitored. Not done and tested. Done and released. Welcome back. If you're here for the first time, this is a channel dedicated entirely to the teachings of Neville Goddard, one of the most lucid and profound mystics of the 20th century. We explore the principle that consciousness is the only reality, that your imagination is God himself, and that assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the only creative act you will ever need. This episode is for anyone who has done the work, who has entered into the silence, who has built the scene with care and faithfulness, and yet finds themselves wondering why nothing has moved in the outer world. We're going to dismantle the three invisible culprits that sabotage almost every scene you build, and then I will give you the single most effective approach to SATS that produces results without straying, without doubt, without waiting. Stay with me. This may be the most terrifying 40 minutes you spend this year. Let's begin with the first culprit, the one that lives in the preparation before you even close your eyes. Overthinking. You've heard the teaching. You've listened to the lectures. You know that you must construct a scene which implies the fulfillment of your desire. A scene that would be true if your wish were already realized. And so you sit down, perhaps with a journal or perhaps just in your mind, and you try to find the perfect scene. You audition 5 different scenarios. You weigh the sensory vividness of one against the emotional tone of another. You ask yourself, is this scene specific enough? Is it too specific? Should I loop it? Or should I change it night to night? Should I include other people or keep it simple? Does this imply what I want, or does it imply something slightly adjacent to what I want? And before you know it, you've spent an hour thinking about the scene instead of being in it. You've turned a simple imaginative act into an engineering problem. Let me tell you something Neville said again and again, though in different words and in different settings. Your imagination is not a machine. It is not a computer program that requires perfect syntax. It is the creative power of the universe itself, and it responds not to your logic, but to your feeling. When you overthink the scene, you are not sharpening it. You are draining it of the one quality that makes it effective, the natural ease of acceptance. You cannot force yourself to feel something is real while simultaneously analyzing whether the method you are using is correct. These are 2 incompatible states of consciousness. One is being, the other is doing. One is resting in the assumption, the other is laboring in the uncertainty. Neville told a story more than once of a woman who wanted to marry a specific man. She came to him confused, because she had tried so many different affirmations and visualizations, and nothing had worked. He asked her a simple question. If you were already married to him, what would be different tonight when you go to bed? And she said, well, I suppose I would feel his presence beside me. I would feel the warmth of him next to me as I fall asleep. Neville told her, then do that tonight. Feel him there as you drift off. Don't imagine the proposal. Don't imagine the wedding. Don't try to construct some elaborate scene with dialogue and witnesses and a ring. Just feel the simple, natural, intimate reality that you are his wife, and he is beside you now. She did it, and within weeks the outer circumstances shifted in ways she could not have anticipated or arranged, and the man proposed. Do you see what happened there? She stopped overthinking. She stopped trying to find the perfect scene that covered every possible angle. She dropped into the simplest possible implication, and she inhabited it with feeling. That is what makes a scene work, not its cleverness, its feeling of reality. And you cannot feel something is real if part of your mind is busy grading your performance. So the first correction, the first shift you must make if your scene is not working is this. Stop preparing the scene as though you are writing a screenplay. Stop revising it endlessly before you even enter it. Choose something simple. Choose something sensory. Choose something that implies your desire is done, and then go into it with your hold, not with your analyzing mind. When you enter that state, you are not trying to get somewhere. You are already there, and the quality of already is never anxious. It is never straining. It is restful. It is easy. It is natural. That is the first culprit, overthinking the preparation. Let it be simple. Let it be easy. Your imagination knows what to do. Trust it. Now the second culprit. And this one is more insidious because it lives not in the preparation, but in the repetition. Scene checking. You've done the scene. You've looped it a few times. Perhaps you felt something stir within you. Perhaps you felt a moment where it seemed real, and you drift off to sleep, or you end your session and you feel good. But the next day, you wake up and you check. Did anything change? Did anyone text? Did anything shift in the outer world? And when nothing has yet appeared, you go back to the scene that night. But now you're doing it with a subtle urgency. You're doing it because it didn't work yet. You're doing it to make it work. And that, my friend, that is not creation. That is begging. That is petition. And imagination does not respond to petition. It responds to assumption. Let me speak plainly. Every time you return to the scene from a place of lack, from a place of checking whether it worked, you are not impressing your subconscious with the state of the wish fulfilled. You are impressing it with the state of the wish fulfilled. And waiting is a state. It is a specific frequency of consciousness. It is the feeling of not yet. And consciousness, your own wonderful human imagination, does not care what you want. It only cares what you are. If you are in the state of waiting, you will continue to wait. If you are in the state of waiting, you will continue to have things to check. But if you are in the state of jucking, you will continue to have things to check. But if you are in the state of done, the outer world must conform. It has no choice. Consciousness is the only reality. Neville once said, "Do you believe that you need to repeat your desire 100 times before it takes root? If you do, then for you it will take 100 times. But the truth is, one assumption completely accepted is enough. One moment of full persuasion is more powerful than 1,000 repetitions done in doubt. It is not the number of times you imagine the scene that matters. It is the degree to which you accept it as true while you are in it. And here is the trap. The more you check, the more you prove to yourself that you do not yet accept it as true. And the more you do not accept it, the more you will need to check. You create a loop, not of fulfillment, but of doubt disguised as diligence. I want to tell you about a man Neville mentioned in one of his lectures. A man who wanted a specific job in another city. He had no connections there. 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 He had no clear path. But he knew the teaching. He constructed a scene in which he was sitting in the office of that company, at the desk that would be his, handling papers that belonged to his new role. He entered that scene one night before sleep. He felt the weight of the chair beneath him. He felt the texture of the papers in his hands. He heard the ambient sounds of the office around him. He did it once. He felt it was real. And then he never did it again. He did not check the next day. He did not repeat it the next night. He simply lived from the assumption that it was done. And within a short time, a series of completely unforeseen events resulted in him being offered exactly that position. When Neville asked him later how he did it, the man said something that I want you to hear very carefully. He said, "I only imagined it once because after I did, I knew it was done. I didn't need to keep doing it." That is the consciousness that creates, not repetition out of fear, not looping out of uncertainty, but one act done in fullness and then released. You see, when you truly accept that your imagination is God, you do not need to convince God. You do not need to remind God. You simply need to assume the state and let God, which is your own consciousness, do what it does naturally, which is to own consciousness, do what it does naturally, which is to harden into fact. So the second correction is this. Stop yecking the scene. Stop monitoring the outer world for feedback. Stop going back into the scene from a place of lack. If you must repeat the scene, do it not because you need it to work, but because it feels natural to dwell there, because you enjoy the feeling of it, because you love returning to that inner reality. But if you find yourself repeating it out of fear that it hasn't worked, stop. That repetition is not helping. It is hurting. It is reinforcing the very consciousness that delays your manifestation. This brings me to the third and most pervasive culprit, the one that Neville named very specifically: lust of result. This is the great poisoner of every imaginative act. You know what I mean by it, even if you've never heard the phrase. It is the desperate hunger for the thing, the fevered watching for signs, the constant inner question, when will it come? It is the inability to rest in the assumption because you are too busy craving the manifestation. And I tell you, lust of result is not desire. Desire is natural. Desire is beautiful. Desire is the very movement of life within you, calling you forward into expansion. But lust of result is desire plus doubt. It is wanting the thing because you do not yet have it, and that because is the poison. When you imagine your scene with lust of result, you are not living in the end. You are living in the gap. You are acutely aware of the distance between where you are and where you want to be, and your imagination is being used not to close that gap, but to measure it. You loop the scene and you think, yes, I want that. Oh, I really want that. I need that to happen. And every ounce of that wanting is a confession that it is not yet yours. You are not assuming the state of the wish fulfilled. You are assuming the state of the wish fulfilled. You are assuming the state of the wish desired. And desire without assumption is impotent. It is noise. It is fantasy without faith. Neville made this distinction very clear. He said, you do not imagine in order to get something. You imagine in order to be something. And when you are it, you have it. The having is automatic. But if you try to skip the being and go straight to the having, you will fail every time. Because consciousness does not create from wanting. It creates from being. Who are you being when you enter your scene? Are you being the person who already has it? Or are you being the person who already has it? Or are you being the person who desperately wants it? These are two entirely different realities. Let me tell you what lust of result looks like in practice. You finish your SATS session, and the moment you open your eyes, you feel a little thrill of hope. You think, maybe this time it will work. Maybe by the end of the week I'll see something. Maybe tomorrow. And you carry that hope through the day, but it is fragile. By afternoon you check your phone. You check your circumstances. And when nothing has changed, the hope deflates. It turns into frustration. And that night, when you return to the scene, you're not entering it from confidence. You're entering it from need, from urgency. And that urgency is a state. It is the state of lack pretending to be creation. And your subconscious receives it exactly as it is. It does not hear your words. It does not see your scene. It feels your state. And if your state is, I need this to happen, then that is what you will continue to experience, the ongoing need for it to happen. Now contrast that with the consciousness of the man who imagined once and never again, or the consciousness of the woman who felt her husband beside her and then simply went to sleep. These people did not lust after the result. They entered the scene, they felt it was real, and they released it. They did not carry it forward as a project. They did not monitor it as a task. They assumed it was done, and they moved on. And the outer world, which is nothing more than the shadow of consciousness, had no choice but to reflect that doneness. Neville used the phrase again and again, the end. Live in the end. Live from the end. Not live toward the end. Not live toward the end. Not live hoping for the end. Live in it. And here is the secret that dissolves lust of result completely. When you truly live in the end, you are no longer interested in the result. You already have it. The result is where you are now. You are not reaching for it. You are resting in it. And that rest, that inner Sabbath, that is the consciousness that creates. So what do you do if you recognize lust of result in yourself? First, you admit it. You do not pretend you are in the state when you are not. Neville said, honesty with yourself is the beginning of all change. If you are hungry for the thing, acknowledge it. Do not dress up your hunger as faith. But then, and this is the critical move, you do not try to fight the hunger. You do not try to suppress the wanting. Instead, you go directly to the end. You go into your imagination and you give yourself the experience of having it now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. You saturate your mind with the sensory reality of the wish fulfilled until the hunger dissolves, because hunger only exists in the absence of satisfaction. When you imagine with real feeling, when you make the scene vivid and real and present, the hunger fades. You feel full, you feel complete, and that fullness is the state that creates. Now, I promised you the one approach that actually produces results. The one scene, done, released method. Let me walk you through it step by step so that tonight, or whenever you next enter your silence, you can apply this with perfect clarity. First, choose your scene, not scenes, one scene, and choose it based on this single criterion. Does this scene imply that my desire is already fulfilled? Not that it is coming, not that it might happen, that it is done. For instance, if you want a specific relationship, your scene is not the first date, it is not the confession of love, it is not the kiss. Those things imply progress, not fulfillment. Your scene is something that could only be true if you were already together. Perhaps you are lying in bed and you feel the warmth of their body beside you. Perhaps you are hearing them say good night in the way that only an intimate partner would. Perhaps you are seeing a ring on your finger and feeling the weight of it. Whatever you choose, let it be simple, sensory, and unmistakably post-fulfillment. It does not need to be elaborate, it needs to be real. Second, choose a time when you are naturally drowsy. Neville emphasized this again and again. The ideal time for impressing the subconscious is just before sleep, when the conscious mind begins to relax its grip and the inner gates open. You do not need to sit upright in meditation. You do not need to be alert. In fact, alertness is a disadvantage here. You want to be relaxed, comfortable, and on the edge of sleep. This is the state Neville called the state akin to sleep, and it is the most receptive state you will ever enter. Third, enter the scene. Do not think about it. Do not narrate it. Be in it. Feel the texture of the moment. If you are touching something, feel it. If you are hearing something, feel it. If you are seeing something, see it from the first person. You are not watching yourself in the scene. You are in the scene. You are looking out through the eyes of the person who already has what you desired. Let the scene unfold naturally. Do not force it. Let it breathe. And as you do, let a feeling come over you. Not the feeling of excitement, though, that may arise. Not the feeling of hope, but the feeling of naturalness. The feeling of hope, but the feeling of course. The feeling of it is done. Neville called this the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and it is not a big emotion. It is a quiet knowing, a soft certainty, a restfulness. That is what you are after. Fourth, loop the scene gently. You do not need to loop it 100 times. You loop it only until it begins to take on the tones of reality, until the imaginary starts to feel as solid as the outer world did a moment ago. For some people, this happens in 1 or 2 loops. For others, it takes a few minutes. There is no rule. You loop it until you feel something within you settle, until you feel satisfied, until you feel it is done. And then, and this is the critical part, you let it go. You do not hold on to it. You do not try to keep it alive in your mind. You let yourself drift into sleep from within the scene. Or if you are doing this during the day, you simply release it and go about your life. Fifth, you do not return to the scene unless it feels natural. This is where most people fail. They do the scene once, and the next night they do it again. Not because they want to, but because they think they have to. They think repetition is the key. But repetition is only useful if it comes from faith, not fear. If the next night you feel drawn to the scene, if it feels delicious to return to it, then by all means do so. But if you are returning to it because you are checking whether it worked, because you are trying to make it work, stop. You have already planted the seed. Do not dig it up to see if it is growing. Leave it alone. Let your subconscious do what it does in the dark. Let consciousness harden the assumption into fact without your interference. Trust the process. Trust the law. Trust that imagination creates reality, and that your one act, if it was done with feeling, was enough. Sixth, live from the state during the day. This does not mean you walk around pretending. It does not mean you lie to yourself or deny the evidence of your senses. It means you cultivate the inner feeling that it is done. When thoughts of doubt arise, you do not fight them. You gently redirect your attention to the inner truth. You remember the scene. You remember how it felt. You remind yourself quietly, it is done. And you move through your day with that inner anchor. This is not effort. It is simply a shift of attention. It is choosing the inner over the outer. It is dwelling in the reality of imagination rather than the illusion of the senses. And seventh, when the manifestation comes, and it will, you do not be surprised. You do not celebrate as though something unlikely occurred. You receive it naturally, as you would receive anything that you knew was already yours, because in consciousness it was already yours. The outer appearance is simply the echo, the shadow, the confirmation of what was already true within. This is the one seen, done, released approach. It requires no strain, no effort, no endless repetition. It requires only one thing: full acceptance in the moment of imagining. That is all. One moment of complete assumption, followed by release, followed by living from the state. That is the entire technique. And I tell you, if you do this, if you truly do this, your scene will work, not because of the scene, but because you have become the person for whom that scene is natural. And consciousness, which is the only reality, must objectify what you are. Now let me take a step back and ask a deeper question. Why does this matter? Why do we concern ourselves with scenes and techniques and manifestations? Is it only so that we can get what we want? Is it only so that we can change our circumstances? No. I tell you, that is the beginning, but it is not the end. The real reason Neville taught this law is to reveal to you who you are. You are not a body. You are not a personality. You are not a personality. You are not a personate. You are consciousness itself. You are the very power that creates worlds. And when you learn to assume a state and see it harden into fact, you are not learning a trick. You are remembering your identity. You are remembering your identity. You are remembering that you are God in human form, creating your reality with every assumption you hold. This teaching is not about getting, it is about being. And when you know who you are, when you truly know that consciousness is the only reality and that you are that consciousness, then the things you once struggled for come easily. Because you are no longer trying to get them. You are simply assuming them. And assumption, when it is complete, is creation. Let me tell you what Neville said toward the end of his life, when he had seen this law prove itself 1,000 times over in his own experience, and in the experiences of those who heard him. He said, "You are told in the book of John, before Abraham was, I am. Before the world was, I am. I am is the name of God." And every time you say I am, you are calling forth the creative power of the universe. When you say I am poor, you create poverty. When you say I am sick, you create sickness. When you say I am sick, you create sickness. When you say I am sick, you create sickness. When you say I am unloved, you create loneliness. But when you say I am wealthy, I am healthy, I am healthy, I am used to it, and you related it, not because you are manipulating a law outside of you, but because you are that law. You are the operant power. You are God. This is the truth that lies beneath every scene, every technique, every manifestation. You are not a student trying to learn how to use the law. You are the law. And when you realize that, everything changes. You stop straining. You stop digging. You stop checking. You simply assume, and you rest. And the world, which is yourself pushed out, rearranges itself to match your assumption. So if your scene is not working, I tell you, it is not the scene. It is the consciousness with which you entered it. It is the overthinking that drained it of feeling. It is the overthinking that drained it of feeling. It is the checking that reinforced lack. It is the lust that poisoned it with doubt. But now you know. Now you see. And tonight when you enter your scene, you will enter it differently. You will enter it simply. You will enter it with feeling. You will enter it with a quiet certainty that it is done. And you will release it. And you will trust. And you will see. Before we close, I want to leave you with one thought to carry with you. It is something Neville said often, and it is the key to this entire teaching. He said, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and observe the route that your attention follows. You will notice that as long as you remain faithful to your assumption, your attention is directed to events that imply the fulfillment of your desire. But the moment you waver, the moment you return to the old state, your attention is drawn back to circumstances that reflect lack. So the question is not, is my scene working? The question is, am I remaining faithful to the state? Because the scene is just a tool. The state is the cause. And when you live in the state, when you dwell in the consciousness of the wish fulfilled, the outer world must follow. It has no choice. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, let go of everything you thought you had to do. Let go of the complicated techniques. Let go of the pontificated techniques. Let go of the monitoring and the checking and the fear that it is not working. Choose one simple scene. Enter it with your whole heart. Feel it is real. And then release it. Let it go. Let consciousness do its perfected work in the deep. And tomorrow, live from the assumption that it is done. Not that it will be done, that it is done. That is the consciousness that creates. That is the state that produces results. You are not a person hoping for a better life. You are God Himself, imagining the life you desire into being. You are the creator. You are the dreamer. And the dream is already complete in consciousness. All that remains is for you to accept it. So accept it now. Assume it now. And release it now. And release it now. And then, my friend, watch as the world reflects back to you the truth you have finally accepted within. Thank you for being here. Thank you for walking this path with an open heart and a willing mind. Remember, consciousness is the only reality. Imagination creates reality. And you are that imagination. Go now and create.